All right, hello, welcome to this video. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome and welcome back. If you have, my intention is unity and oneness. So many places and spaces to go into. I did a video yesterday and I did actually several videos I'm going to be posting. I wanted to tell you about, well, we're going to drop in with the guides and just go into a little bit of flow about what's happening in the collective right now. And I do that pretty much every time. But one of the things I wanted to share that I've noticed, I didn't realize what was going on in the world as of yesterday or the day before when I dropped in with the guides. And I've had a realization around the patterns that happen in my own energetic field when something bad is happening. I go into goofy mode. So when there's something going on energetically in the world and the collective, I get goofy and I don't realize that's it's almost like sometimes I get called, now sometimes I get depressed, but I'm just going to be really candid right now as a human being, from one human to another, from one starseed to another. Keep it simple, starseeds. We go through cycles of our feelings and emotions, and we are all connected etherically and quantumly. We're quantumly entangled. Spooky action at a distance. When something happens in one part of the world, especially if you're sensitive to it, you might feel it. And it might express itself in, gosh, I don't know why I feel tired today. Why do I feel depressed? Why did all of a sudden I wake up wide awake when potentially a solar flare went off? Or why am I feeling such a huge amount of angst today when everything in my life is going really well? Unbeknownst to us, a catastrophe happened over in, another part of the world. And I could make a list right now of some of the catastrophes that are going on, between war, between people that are protesting, between families that are being impacted by what's happening in the social, political, everywhere, not just in the United States. Earth changes, earthquakes, floods, all of this. So we are a microorganism in the macro, right? From one perspective. We, as a collective, we are a web of beings that are all interconnected and interwoven together under the guise, under the illusion of being separate, to have an individual experience. So when these things happen, they impact all of us to some degree. Some people are completely immune to it, we'll say. Some people are completely, in a different bubble, and they've put a bubble around themselves that is so thick that they may not feel any of it. And so each of us is having an individual experience. So for those of you who are feeling it, this message is going to be for you. For me, I tend to oscillate. I call it, I'm a Pisces. I jokingly say I've got 13 different personalities. I don't know why 13, but sometimes I'm very high energy, sometimes I'm super mellow and chill, and other times I'm playful, and other times I'm serious. And I actually like being a little bit different all the time because it gives me a range of where to operate in. And that's me personally. Other people are very the same all the time, straight across the board. And that's their gift because they're in that space, which is very balanced and that's their thing. Not to say that I'm imbalanced. I am balanced in the individuality that I express myself in from day to day. I still find a center, even though I might express it differently in my moods or whatever it is. So I'm sharing this because we're all individuals. We all have a different way in which we show up throughout the day, in which we express ourselves throughout the day. So celebrate whatever it is that you are, because that is unique to you. All right. That was the first kind of message I want to share with the guides. The other thing that I wanted to express, I did a picture drawing the other day of what the guides were talking about, linearity versus multidimensionality. Some of us are seeing these new grids that have landed. Some of us are seeing us interacting in a higher dimensional existence. The message I pulled through was that we've accessed a completely different region in space. I've been talking about this for years. My friends and sisters, Jess and Candace, have been talking about these new grids, these new overlays, these new versions of reality that many of us are feeling, but we can't quite necessarily define it. So I'm going to just go back and recap this video that I did in the pink. I actually think I labeled it something about farts. You guys, when there's really serious stuff going on in the world, sometimes I get really goofy. And I wanted to point that out because humor, is important. And what I was kind of discussing with several star brothers and sisters, fellow humans about this is we're here to counterbalance the waves that are happening that are trying to throw us off balance. And so when things get really dark and dismal, sometimes we're going to feel dark and dismal. We're going to feel depressed. We're going to feel anxiety. We're going to feel a little lost. We're not going to be sure necessarily why we're feeling that way. And then we turn on the news and we're like, oh, all right, well, thousands of people are suffering and maybe we're picking up on those vibes. I tend to do that. And oftentimes I tend to go into super goofy mode. My friend Candace calls it silly and, I already forgot. I was gonna say silly and sublime, but that is part of it. But it's like finding the silly and being, okay, I gotta get this right. Sorry, Candace. Sacred. I couldn't think of the word. So she does silly and sacred. And, Jess and I were talking, so I'm kind of hitting different parts of the conversations I've been having with my sisters and brothers. So the silly and the sacred, I get silly. And I remember writing an article or a post during the whole 2020 issues that we were experiencing, that we were all going through. And I got goofy. I think a few of us did. I mean, if you go back and look at some of my videos, I think somebody was like, Carrie has lost her mind. I mean, I always express that on here. Actually, I do quite a bit. But oftentimes, I just get goofy. And it's my way of holding a field, of holding a space. Some days I'm much more serious and I have to integrate things and process things. And other times it's like, I just lost my marbles and everything's out the window and I'm going to get as goofy as I can. Part of that, from my perspective, is to balance or counterbalance the opposite. So it's humor in opposites. And it's a little bit of the Hierarchal, the teacher, coyote, if you're looking at shamanism or animal medicine. It's a little bit of that clown. The irony is I never liked clowns growing up, but there is a teacher in that methodology. And so I have a little bit of that within me. And it's that Hierarchal, it's humor in opposites. It's laughing at ourselves when things have gotten way too serious. Now, I want to just highlight that for a moment because, as I said in my previous video, I'm not taking away from pain or saying we shouldn't feel pain. We should just pretend like everything's sunshine and rainbows when other people are suffering. I am deeply empathic. And that was one of my first things I experienced as a child in the form of psychic telepathy, so on and so forth. Oftentimes that shows up for us in us feeling other people's emotions. We can all do that from one perspective. But how we utilize that and respond to that is what the message is. How we utilize that empathy, do we fall inside of that and just get, the word I'm hearing is drown in those emotions and feelings and sensations? And again, I'm seeing that picture that I've talked about in so many older videos of we got to put on our air mask if the plane is going down before we do it for our neighbor. Otherwise, we both might not make it, right? We can't help others if we're not helping ourselves. And that's a little bit of that teacher, that Hayoka of humor in opposites. It's like, I'm here to help others, but I got to do something for myself first, which isn't necessarily what we think. So as empaths, oftentimes, some of us are just naturally that way. There's a lot of people who are beginning to feel that empathy that they haven't felt before. And they're creating labels around it and over-identification with just that part of themselves. One of the messages that the guides talks about is not over-identifying with that particular piece of the entirety of the puzzle. Because when we're only going into the empath, we are compartmentalizing that a little bit. We're not necessarily taking everything that we have available at our disposal as a tool. And we can sometimes see that, or we label it as a weakness or an excuse, right? You guys know where I did it when I first started recognizing that that's what I was doing, was feeling all that other stuff. I went through a lot of cycles, a lot of inner turmoil and angst. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, that's not mine. Why am I hanging on to that? Why am I over-identifying with that person's feelings and emotions? So even though we are all one organism and we are all moving in the same soup, we are each individual, unique individual expressions. So we don't all have to feel the same way, whether we're told that from somebody else or we're not. From my perspective and from a perspective of what I've tuned into, that's not why we're here. Otherwise, we'd all look the same, talk the same, go through the same experiences. So while someone else is going through something, we may feel it, but it is our choice in that moment how we respond to it. And if we're going to respond by wallowing in that, who are we helping? How are we adding, right, in a sustainable way to raising the frequency and the vibration, if that's what we really want to do? Okay, so we're covering response, choice, and empathy. And I guess that's kind of the topic for right now. But I want to go a little deeper, recap what I drew the other day. Old, new. This has always been available, but oftentimes this is how we've been interacting in the past. Linear line of reality, the star seeds, the light that we're holding, right, on this line. And so we have been on this point A to point B to point C. Here's all of our energy. And these other blue stars out here are, I call them sleeper stars, right? Maybe they're not necessarily aware of the impact they're having on, they're just here. They're just living life. Some people call them sleepers. Some people call them, they're this, I don't want to label anyone, because again, it's an individual journey, and it's an individual choice. And the more we judge others and pass judgment onto them, the more that reflects back to us, not only in our personal lives, but what we're seeing unfold around us in the micro to macro. So the more we become aware of our own individual behavior and how that affects everything, the less we will feel the need to judge others. We might feel it, just as an empath feels it. We might think it because we're human, but that doesn't mean we're going to go around passing it on. Oh, you shouldn't this, and I can't believe this person did that, and that's just awful, and they should. Where are we doing that ourselves? And how would we feel? How do we like it when someone does that to us? And it's small, you guys. It's not necessarily about world affairs and those things. Sometimes it's about, oh, can you believe how she dressed? That is so inappropriate. There we go. Really? That person has purple hair? Really? I mean, you guys, I've seen it, I've heard it, I've done it. By the way, I love purple hair. I'm not saying those are the things I've necessarily passed judgment on, but we all have in some form. And we do it still, whether we're conscious of it or not. Now, the key is not to judge ourselves when we find ourselves in judgment. Oopsie, here I go. Okay, I'm going to cancel, clear, delete that. Where am I judging myself? And this is the next layer of all this. I'm not good enough. People don't like me. I feel overweight. I feel underweight. I feel unloved. I am ugly. I am even an ego. I'm so smart that people just don't get me. That's still judgment. It's ego, yes, but all of it is a form of ego. Anyways, I'm not going to go into all those layers. My point is, let's keep it simple. I just had a judgment. You know what? I'm gonna rewire that. What my guides keep calling it is adaptation. We're reassessing. So I always say when I'm working with someone, RA, raw. I just like Egypt and raw. But anyways, RA, recognize and acknowledge. From my perspective, those are the two things. Like, okay, I recognize I'm doing that. I recognize another person is doing that. I'm acknowledging it, but it doesn't mean react and then acknowledge. So a lot of us are in that, react and acknowledge phase where instead we can recognize it, acknowledge it, but we don't have to. How are we going to respond? All right. So I was shown, and it's not just about judgment. It can be a lot of things. It can be afraid, fear, anger. I'm angry at this. I'm angry at that. Well, then we're going to have other people show up in our lives who are also angry because everything is a reflection of where we are vibrationally from one perspective. And I can already hear people going, well, then how come this person who's angry all the time has this amazing life? They've got a great family, they're rich, they're this, they're that. I don't know. But I will say on a broader scale that it could be because they've agreed to do that. Maybe they've had so many lifetimes where they've worked off so much karma, if you want to label that whole karma thing, which is another perspective, that this lifetime they can do what they want. It is not our place to judge them. And by the way, maybe they're put here to keep us in awareness of, wow, okay, that's how they're going to be. That's not how I want to live my life. All right, so let me pause for a second. So I want to go on to the question that was asked of me earlier, and that was, how do we, on an individual basis, do something about what's going on in what we're seeing in the world? And really, the simple answer is, unless you are part of it, and it's part of what you are called to interact with, well, let me rephrase that. It starts with us just doing the simple things. So it's not to say humor and opposites, we're just going to laugh at what's going on, ha 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 ha, and pretend that everything's fine. That's not what Heyoka teachings are all about. It's about not taking ourselves so seriously. So that means not taking others so seriously. And that means looking at everything and going, wow, we really are over-analyzing, over-complicating, and really treating each other. This is the irony. We're treating each other more important than we really are. On the flip side, we're all so important and we're not recognizing that within each other. So there's the opposites. And I don't know if you're following what I'm putting down. I'll give a for instance. We tend to guru-ize, put someone on a pedestal, we tend to put people on pedestals who, from a judgment perspective, don't deserve it. And this is where we catch ourselves, right? Well, why don't they deserve to be put on a pedestal? It isn't about deserving it. It isn't about righteousness, because that's another energy that we're all in the process of recognizing, acknowledging right now. Where are we being righteous, self-righteous in general? That's kind of a theme. I talked about this in another video. But it's not that person doesn't deserve to be put on a pedestal. It's that no one person is more important than another, even if they are making bigger decisions. They're a role model. So one would argue, well, of course, if you're a role model, it's important that you do the right thing. Yes, however, who is the person to decide and judge what that right thing is, what it looks like, what it sounds like, so on and so forth? So we're really at this weird crossroads between these dimensional ideas and concepts of what is higher, what is lower hierarchy, right? I am right, and I believe this, therefore this person is wrong. Even though they kind of believe what I believe, they don't fully believe what I believe, therefore they're an idiot. Whoa, we're seeing a lot of that, you guys. That is a frequency. That is an energy. That is a ripple effect. And we're seeing that at a mass scale play out because we're going to be triggered wherever we are not in balance. I kind of went off into 5 different tangents here. Typical. 13 personalities. So let me get back on track. We're really being called to, so the pedestal thing. So we've got the pedestal, right? But on the flip side, it's important that we do uplift other people when they are having an impact on mass people, but doing it from a balanced way. We've been imbalanced. I'm not as good as this person because they make more money than me. They have a bigger impact than me. Then who am I? We are all affecting the field no matter what. So if we start looking at each other as equally important, then we become less attached to one person making all the decisions and other people having to rebel because they don't like those decisions. We were the ones that put these decision makers in power. We gave them not just power, but we agreed somewhere along the lines. And bear with me, you guys, because I know a lot of you watching this are like, I never agreed to this. At some level or layer, we agreed to the game. We didn't necessarily agree with what decisions are being made, but we agreed to play the game that created a hierarchy. We agreed to participate in a human collective experience, otherwise we wouldn't be here, to participate in a hierarchical game, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, of structure that we thought would potentially benefit us in some way. And now we are at a crossroads where we are recognizing and acknowledging that that structure doesn't fit our principles anymore. It doesn't fit what we would like to fit into, what we would like to flow into. It's not balanced. Yet this is a reflection of our own inner imbalances, where we've given our power away, where we continue to make someone a guru, make someone more important. And we're rebelling against that, yet the way in which we're rebelling isn't balanced either. Because in essence, that person being power entity, whether it's left, whether it's right, whether it's up, whether it's down, whether it's religion, whether it's not, whatever pocket it's in, whatever compartmentalization we've agreed to line up with, I'm going to get to the lineup in just a minute. We've created this. through legal means, through illegal means, through what we give our attention to. We've given our power and we've made a collective agreement to create reality based on these agreements. It's that simple. Now, it's not that simple in how we're going to dismantle that. So people are rebelling because all of a sudden we have these strong empathic, telepathic, emotional charges that are coming up, and we are rising up through the ranks, realizing that we're all equal. But again, if we are reacting in a counterbalance way, anger with anger, control with control, it isn't balancing. So that sounds balanced, right? Like, oh, if I do control with control, we're balancing it out. That's the illusion, because in essence, that's not balanced. We have to come back to a place of communication, compassion, recognition. May the light within me see the light within you. The shadow within me sees the shadow within you, acknowledging that that's inside me too, or has been, or I've been through this. Compassion. And I'm coming into this full circle because that's where we start. But many people aren't starting there. They're jumping into the soup, into the heat, into the fire, because that's the reaction to recognizing that we've given our power away. Yet we're not recognizing that by doing that, we're giving our power to an entity called rage, anger. And then that entity or that collective frequency starts to create around that surge, that power. And then we're creating the same thing that looks something different. We call it something different under the illusion of freedom. But we become slaves to that frequency that we've created in reaction to rebelling against the frequency that we created. Does that make sense? This is what my guides have been sharing with me. So please take this with a grain of salt, but I'm like watching this going, wow, that is really interesting, because I'm part of it too. Okay. So balance. The diagram that I drew is, this is the old. We were linear because a lot of star seeds are like, I'm not making a difference. Look at the world, it's falling apart. We sometimes have to see it for what it is. For years, the world was falling apart. The control structure was created. And we might have felt certain things about it, but we were, boy, I'm just seeing, still in an unseen force, and we were essentially going through our lives not seeing what was going on. Now we're seeing it. But as we see these things unfold around us, if we can come back to that state of recognize and acknowledge the light within me sees the light within you, the shadow within me sees the shadow within you, how can we find common ground and not feed these entities called greed, power, fear, distortion, whatever we want to label it as, judgment? We start to have the answers present themselves because we're able to see things not through the distorted lens of fear, anger, control, power, or the need to take it back because we feel out of control. We feel triggered by anger. We feel empathy, and therefore we get sucked into it, and we're taking on the feelings of the crowd, the collective, as our own, because it's triggering our own feelings of insecurity. How do we do that? And by the way, this is just an overall perspective. Once we recognize this and we step out of the impact zone, we have a bigger impact. We become not pulled into the tornado, we steer the tornado, as Dan Winters would say, through coherence, as many teachers would say, through the heart. And a lot of people are misinterpreting heart and compassion for empathy. And that's a whole other video. Or they're misinterpreting compassion, so they feel compassion, and so they get pulled into the illusion that's being projected in order to take that power back. It's always going to be a push and a pull, push and a pull, push and a pull. A yo-yo effect is what I'm hearing, if we're not doing it from a place of balance. So it really does come to mean us coming together, having a conversation without screaming at each other, without shouting at each other, and drawing a table and saying, this is what we want, this is what you want. And then saying, this is what we want. Excuse me, this is what you want, this is what I want, this is what we want. So let's pull this together and see how we can find this one step at a time. It's not going to all happen at once necessarily. But what's happening is there's these huge pockets of everything happening now all at once. So anyways, so for those of you who don't think you're having an impact, this is the line of linearity that many of us have been operating from. We are the stars, the starlight, and we've been moving from point A to point B. We're focusing on that line. These are the stars, the sleeper stars that have been just hanging out. And so we move up and we increase the energy and we all connect our field. Yet these outer limits, these outer areas, we're not necessarily having as big of an impact on when we're in a linear thing. We're only focusing on that topic, subject, person, place, thing. I'm only focusing on this. Not that everybody was meant to focus in multiple things, but in actuality, now we're operating in a multidimensional way. So we're zigzagging, we're jumping. And when I say that, I mean jumping genes, jumping genetics, jumping beans, not jumping as far as like jumping into the fray. We're jumping into multiple realities at the same time and weaving them together so that we can collapse the old realities, old timelines, and dysfunction as we jump and sew together SEW and sew a needle pulling thread, make a sound, make a frequency through our heart coherency. We create a stream and an interconnectivity that we weave together that enhances our perspective and allows us to spin in a different direction. Spin as in a DJ, spin as in table, spin as in record. That's all play on words. We then come together at the table and we pull together different records and we see how we can merge them and weave them and take different points like a DJ would. And it's a layover, it's a voiceover, it's a mashup. I don't know what the word is. It's all of that. And we create different beats. We create different harmonies and we go, wow, okay, never saw that before. Thank you. But I don't really like this sound. All right, let's put that off the table for a moment, come back to it later. Let's spin this for a while. And it becomes this interactive experience that the star seeds, those that are lighting up from inner to outer, those that are aware and not jumping into the fray, not that these are all sleepers, because a lot of star seeds that are awake are in the fray too, because they're in those, they're warriors, right? They're like, man, I got to get involved. I got to make a difference. There's no judgment. Everybody's on their own path. But I'm just saying there's those of us that are here to hold the frequency in our own way. It might be organizing a group of I'm just seeing this whole group of people marching together for heart math. Like, I'm going for it. We're going to march today. We're going to do a peaceful connection and we're going to all sit in a collective group. Like, what did they do where they have those dance mobs? Like a dance mob. Those are awesome, by the way. Do you know how good that was for frequency? Some people felt annoyed by it, but it enhances the frequency. It is Hyoka. It is humor and opposites. It's meant to snap us back and go, what is going on? Get us out of our heads. It creates a collective experience of fun and silliness, sacred and silly. Like, let's do some more collective mob dances. I'm not just saying that, but like heart math, right? We're going to march, we're going to do an organized gathering, and we're going to do it for a full day of meditation. And I know a lot of people are like, okay, that was the 60s, Carrie. We're watching the 60s unfold around us right now in 2025, but we're watching it from a different perspective. We are a different energy. We're in a different dimension. We're working and pulling the threads from that timeline. We're dissolving the systems that were part of the foundation that brought us to where we are now. And we're watching that. That's part of what's happening. So now we're zigzagging, we're becoming multidimensional. So we're spreading out, which creates more availability, accessibility, and has a larger impact. So now it's all over. And because of that, as we connect, we encapsulate energetically a lot more. So these sleepers are feeling our vibes. Maybe, not all of them. When I say sleepers, it might be that people just weren't aware that they wanted, people are waking up and saying, I'd really like to help humanity. I'd like to have an impact on this. I'd like to be a farmer. Wow, I'd like to work with children. I never really thought about that before. That can be a person waking up. It doesn't look necessarily like we think it should when a person wakes up. When I say sleepers, becomes aware and remembers more about themselves. That doesn't mean they're going to become aware and remember what's happening within the political realm and the shadow network. That isn't necessarily their path. And if everyone became aware of that, would it change things? Certainly. But it's not just about that. And that's part of the other message. That is an example of one piece of the puzzle. It's all connected. So not everybody is meant to focus on just that. And remember, we're being called to remember where attention goes, energy flows. So if we're all focused on our brothers and sisters' galactic landing, that's great. But what about grounding into our bodies? And what about our connection with the earth? And what about sustainability in the true sense of sustainability? Not the stories we've been fed about what that looks like, what it should look like. Really going and using, which is the next message, our discernment to say, but what does that feel like? Or what does that really look like? Because for some reason that doesn't make sense, because our higher senses are turning on, which means our discernment is turning on, and the stories that we're being pumped, I'm hearing pump up the jam, that are being piped in to our sound field aren't sounding. They aren't sound. They're not sustainable. They don't sound right because they're not adding up to the vibratory frequency that we are capable of holding now. They might have been good at one time. They're not anymore. So we're starting to bridge that together, and that becomes this massive spiraling that has a larger impact across the world. And that means all the old stuff is going to really be loud. It's like nails on a chalkboard. We hear it and we're like, whoa, that is a big distortion. Didn't hear it before. I'm aware of it. Don't get sucked into the distortion. It's like a child throwing a temper tantrum, right? You don't throw a temper tantrum too, although sometimes that's effective to snap the child out of it. And they're like, what are you doing? But the irony is that's not how, but that's what's happening. So we're at that toddler kind of stage of figuring out how to balance this all out. Okay, that was my overview of what's happening. And this is just one layer. There's so many layers I'd love to dive into in different videos. I think that was enough. I'd love to channel a little bit more and go into a direct answer So maybe I'll call this part 2. I might separate these videos. So what I'll do is go into a part 2 in this moment and maybe see about some more direct answers that the guides have to share. Hopefully that just resonated in the sense of what intuitively I'm seeing, feeling, and experiencing too. I've gone through a lot of stages, I'll just end on this note, of feeling helpless, of feeling angry, feeling almost feeling righteous, being in a place of judgment. All these things I experience as well on a daily basis, but I experienced them a lot more a few years back than I do now. And I'm very grateful for those experiences and those feelings. So I'll kind of transition into the channeling from there, because gratitude, I said compassion earlier and I listed all those things, but gratitude for our fellow humans and what the colors that we all express. I just feel this immense appreciation for our fellow humans. There are beings who are here who are going through what they're going through just to wake us up and to make us aware of their humanity, to make us aware of our humanity or inhumanity. Same with animals, same with, I could go on and on. So I'm grateful for having the opportunity to see the beauty in humanity, and also to now step into a different role as a human so that I can add to the collective experience of being a bridge to a new reality. That doesn't mean we're not going to have to get our hands dirty. For some of us, it is about taking action. And for some, it's about being a monk. Not that the monks aren't taking action, they're doing it in their own way. So again, that's a whole other video, but I think we're in the process of finding out what that means for us. Where do we fit in to this bridge in a dynamic, take action, and yet balanced and somewhat neutral, compassionate way? We're learning, we're remembering. And as we remember things, sometimes memories can be painful. When I was going through my whole process of awakening, I was remembering things from other lifetimes that were not fun. I was remembering things from my childhood that I'd forgotten. And that's also what's happening on a huge scale for a lot of us. And part of what we're witnessing is remembering too. It's causing us to remember. This is not who, at the core and the essence, I am. I am this, I am that, I am. And so it's I am that I am, right? But acknowledging that we are all part of this bigger core energy. Okay. Part 2. Let's go into flow. So if I've combined this channel, you might have had enough, but I'm going to do part 2 right now. So this is part 2. I'm going to go into flow. And so you asked, what can I do as an individual? How is it that I can make an impact on what's happening around me? Why am I feeling so called to step to the forefront and to be part of this unraveling? Sometimes I burp when I'm doing this, so bear with me, the energies are shifting. There is no one answer. And for those of you who are linear thinkers and planners, that will not sit well with you. Many of you want an answer now. You want what you think you want. We are here to share with you that the energy is messy, in case you haven't noticed. But many people are forgetting that they haven't noticed the messy energy that is going on inside their own body, inside their own reality, inside their own temple, inside their own structure. And so they are seeking to go out and fix other people's temples. They are seeking to go out and fix that which they see as disorganized, messy, and against their own better judgment. Play on words. It's like they're doing this against their own better judgment, but they think that what's happening outside of them is against their better judgment. We invite you to step away from the fray for a moment. It does not mean that you won't show up this day and announce your views, announce your thoughts, announce your feelings. Yet we invite you to do this from a new understanding that your thoughts and your feelings and your views are based on your perception and what you are viewing through. If you are looking through the haze and you see someone coming forward that represents a shape, does not mean you will necessarily understand the true representation of that shape. You can misinterpret what you are seeing. And that is what is happening across the board. And that is what is intentionally being spread across the board. For when we are spread out and separated, by the way, I'm being shown, that's not what this is. This is spreading out, but not being separated. It's an intentional activation and awakening. The blue stars are the ones that feel separate. They feel like, not literally blue stars, but those on the drawing, they don't feel connected. They feel disconnected, like they're floating around. Where do I belong? What do I do? We create a grid when we recognize from within our inner source of power. And so we are called to listen. And as we listen with ears to hear, we will respond with a voice that has a resounding sound that overlays the distress signals, the distress. I'm seeing a rhythm. I'm seeing a funnel. That's a play on words. Instead of feeding the funnel that is being sucked out of the collective as a frequency disturbance to redirect I'm hearing objective and energetic. Yeah, I'm just seeing it's like pulling it in one direction, and then it's using that energy to redistribute it where it, us versus them, wants to go. But this is a pattern, and this is not to be listened to or interpreted with fear. For we are past all that, are we not? We are in a place, or we feel as if we are in a place where we should be past all that. We are being called to look to our past and to recognize that which we have chosen to step up into is now not holding the same spark, the same magnetism. And neither are the people that we have chosen from our past to step up as leaders. Yet some are also the sleepers, becoming awakened as they are recognizing they are part of the fray. So I'm seeing some of those stars that I was shown are actually people that we wouldn't even guess are going to potentially start going, I don't want to do this anymore. And so more and more sparks will awaken within the dark, because the dark can feel very suffocating. Yet there has been enough of an energetic light lit from within. That which was seeking to dim the light is now being lit up from the light. A light is being shown on the dimmers, if you will, on those who are basically, I'm hearing dim-witted. Like they are saying, oh, you're too dim to see us. But we're like, there you are. So this is a reflection of us being aware. Oh, so part of what I'm being shown, I'm getting goosebumps. We're seeing all of this stuff, what's coming up about a lot of things, right? Political, socioeconomic, all of it. And we're like, oh, that's distorted. That's ugly. So they think we're too dim-witted to see them, but we're actually looking back at them, recognizing them. But they're like, oh, they don't see us, but we do. Not everybody, right? But in that I see you, you see me kind of thing, what happens is it activates something within more people. And that creates, I'm hearing, a choice point. We then can interpret our reality and choose if we want to point more of our energy in that direction, or if we want to say no more. We are not, and that's a play on words, we know more now. So we're like, that's not something I'm going to feed anymore. I'm not going to feed that energy. No more for me. Thank you. And so the energy that was once feeding on us is left hungry. And so it gets louder in order to suck in more energy from that which it needs in order to resource, because it is not sustainable or self-resourceful. It relies on the resources of our commitment to it. For the more we look at it, the bigger, I'm seeing a peacock, like it puffs up its feathers and says, look at me. And we're like, ooh, but we're not dazzled by that anymore. Yes, we are speaking of an energetic frequency and a representation of a grid pattern or a geometric display or an overlay of a matrix, if you will, of our reality that we are all embedded into. We could call it patterns that we have each interlocked within and distributed through an overlay of belief systems. And so that is a higher vibrational explanation of what is happening on what we're watching play out. And so as we look at it, it feels empowered. Yet this is a false power, for we are not looking at it in the same way. Rather than looking at it and giving it our worship, if you will, we are seeing it and saying we no longer worship that which is disempowering us. Mewa shiki ma ana akuaha ishinike kai mewu shiki mehe inike kai mewu aha iniwe shuyeneke. And so we redistribute our energy. As we redistribute our energy into programs, into projects, into creative stories and accessing greater stories, it builds a different structure in which we are giving our time, attention, and energy to. So I'm being shown us focusing on individual ways that we can imprint into reality with each other. I'm going to take this group, and rather than fight the good fight, I'm going to build a sustainable farm myself. I'm going to create a restaurant that is that employs people who are struggling to find a job. I'm seeing like a lot more farm to table. I'm seeing people who have been down and out finding power through like empowerment, because other people are saying, let's work together. This doesn't mean it's going to be with everyone, but this is the new way of looking at things. Like I'm seeing, I'm being called to give a lot of for instances, so I'm going to. Women's groups, women who have been in abusive relationships, reaching out to each other. By the way, you can look at this up. I have a friend who is involved in the, let me just make sure I'm getting this right. Well, I'm not going to look it up. It's the Nicole Sinkuli Foundation. So if you want to participate in helping or getting into helping other women get out of abusive situations, it's Nicole, Nicole, Sinkule, Sinkule Foundation. And you can go online and just Google that, look it up. But I'm giving that as for instance, people, families coming together, supporting families who have been in a situation where they've been controlled, where they've given their power away, where they've felt helpless, empowering them to step up and take their power back. Rehabilitating, and I'm going to go the opposite end, rehabilitating criminals who maybe have been involved in criminal activity because they came from a family of abuse. They were abused as a child. And maybe now they can become a counselor to help other people not abuse children, women, or boys and girls, because it's not just women who go through abuse. Men go through it as well. A mother can abuse her son. A father can abuse their daughter. A father can abuse his son. This is a lineage thing. This is a DNA thing. So we're re-imprinting the DNA, saying this isn't something we want to continue to carry on in future generations. Do you see where I'm going with this? This is the juice. Get involved in that. Were you abused as a child? How can I help others recognize that that is not a behavior that's empowering? People who abuse other people are doing it because they feel out of control. They feel disempowered. They are trying to take that, like I was saying, suck it out, because they're not sustainable themselves. So again, coming back to if people were in a place of heart coherence, getting involved with heart math, going out and doing group meditations, finding out what people in that meditative course are there for. Maybe they're in an abusive situation. Maybe they're angry all the time. Getting involved with military, ex-military. Let's say you come out of the, you've been injured. Helping and volunteering with veterans, right? However, and that can look in so many different ways. It can be through counseling. It can be through working with animals. It can be through meditation. It can be through just conversation and interaction. It can be through listening to their experiences. It can be sharing those experiences. I'm going to keep going. Creative artwork, working with the disabled, creating, use your own creativity. Where do I feel called and inspired to inspire and help mankind? Maybe it's going green. It isn't necessarily making money by going green. It's inventing your own creation. It's finding the things that aren't mainstream and saying, wow, how can we utilize that in a small test group and see how, riding a bike can create energy for my house. I could go on and on, you guys. Maybe I will. What are your thoughts? Where are your ideas? Is it recycling? I have a client that's really all about helping recycle. Great. Create a recycling yard on a piece of property near your house instead of a car wash. People can bring their recycling. Maybe then branch out and reach out to local artists and see how they can reuse some of these materials. Maybe it's collecting clothing for women or children that were abused, or men that are trying to find jobs. What else? We are co-creating this together. That is how we build, not by only focusing on dismantling and pulling things apart. So I'm actually going to end on that note. Apparently I'm going to combine this whole video. In love and light, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Namaste.